welcome. So today we're going to break down a really powerful message from Daniel Lamptey, and it's all about the story of Job. We're going to zoom in on that final chapter because it has this surprising, incredible lesson about what happens after a crisis. Let's jump right in. And Lamptey really kicks things off with a problem that I think we can all relate to. You know, when you're in a crisis, when life just falls apart, the people around you, they start guessing. They try to figure out why it's all happening. And a lot of the time, their imaginations run wild and they get it completely wrong. And this is the exact situation Job found himself in. He's going through unimaginable suffering, and his friends show up. But they're not really there to comfort him. They're there to play detective. They judged him based on what they could see on the surface, and they totally missed what was really going on behind the scenes. And right here, you can see just how massive that gap in perspective was. On one side, you've got his friends' simple, harsh accusations. You must have sinned. You're wicked. You brought this on yourself. But on the other side, Daniel Lamptey explains that God was doing something completely different, something profound. He was taking Job on a unique path, grounding him, maybe even changing his direction entirely. It was a process nobody else could see. And if that wasn't bad enough, here's where it gets almost unbearable. Right in the middle of all that suffering, while Job is being bombarded with accusations, God says nothing. He's silent. And as Lamptey points out, that silence can make you feel completely and utterly alone, left to face all that judgment by yourself. But after all the pain, all the bad advice, and all the finger pointing, the trial finally comes to an end. God breaks his silence. The moment of truth has arrived. So just think about that for a second. After everything Job endured, who do you think God speaks to first? Who does he call out for everything that was said and done during this whole ordeal? And bam! This is the incredible, stunning twist in the story. God's anger isn't aimed at Job, the one who suffered. It's for his friends, the very people who thought they were defending God with all their theories. God looks at them and says, flat out, you guys got it wrong. Job was the one who was speaking rightly about me. Okay, so God's wrath is on them. What now? What's the solution? Well, God gives them a command that is the last thing they would have expected. He doesn't tell them to go pray by themselves. No, he tells them to go to the very person they spent all that time condemning. God lays out these 4 super specific steps for them. 1, get a huge sacrifice ready. 2, you have to go to Job. 3, offer that sacrifice for your own foolishness. And 4, and this is the real kicker, your forgiveness depends entirely on whether or not Job prays for you. Their fate was literally put into the hands of the man they had wronged. I mean, let that sink in for a second. This is so crucial. God basically tells them, I'm not going to listen to you directly. He says, for him, meaning Job, I will accept. Their only path back to good standing with God was through the grace and forgiveness of the man they had torn down. So the friends actually do it. They humble themselves and obey. And Job, he obeys too. And what happens next is just incredible. It shows you the kind of power that gets unleashed when humility and forgiveness finally meet. The story tells us that God began to completely reverse Job's situation, to restore everything he lost. But it wasn't random. There was a specific trigger, a precise moment when that restoration was finally unlocked. And there it is. Job's own breakthrough was directly tied to his act of obedience and forgiveness. The moment he prayed for the very people who caused him so much pain, that's when his own freedom began. It's just, wow. And the restoration, it wasn't just about getting back to normal. No way. The blessing was completely over the top. God gave Job double everything he had before the trial even started. So this brings us right to the heart of the lesson Daniel Lamptey pulls from this entire story. It's a lesson for every single one of us about the unbelievable power of humility in our own lives. And Daniel Lamptey just says it so perfectly, doesn't he? That little phrase, I'm sorry, can feel like the hardest thing in the world to say. It means you have to swallow your pride, you have to kill that something inside you, as he says. But as the story of Job's friends shows us, that single act of humility can be the difference between judgment and total restoration. So when you boil it all down, the takeaway from Daniel Lamptey's message is crystal clear. Pride, it just leads to a dead end. But humility, that's the path that opens the door to restoration. And sometimes, maybe more often than we think, the key to our own solution is in the hands of the person we need to make peace with. And that leaves us with a really powerful question to think about.
When you're faced with that choice, knowing you're in the wrong, what are you going to choose? Holding on to your pride or humbling yourself to find restoration? It's something for us all to consider.